Spoiler alert for the 5.0 Natlan quests. Like, all the big ones, I guess? Hey, it's me, Roosevelt. It's dragon time. But first, guess who's back? It's Enjo! I mean, Sanka. He's in town because he's very interested in the lore of the Scions of the Canopy. Same, Enjo, I mean Sanka, you relatable queen. Many of you might remember Enjo as the scholar who helped guide us through Enkanomiya. Well, it turned out he's just a charismatic, masochistic nerd from the Abyss Order, and he was looking for the book Before Sun and Moon, which details the truth about aliens and the origins of the heavens. But I imagine many people unfortunately missed his second appearance. In the limited time Three Realms Gateway offering event, we had to fight off the darkness that was consuming Enkanomiya, and during this event, he told us of an old legend about bishops that had evolved to look just like people, which at the time many people brushed off as Enjo being a liar and conspiracy theorist. Now, during the Tribal Chronicles of the Scions, he's shaking down these kids for stories about Natlan. We learn about the era of the Grand Alliance, where a tyrant named Ochkan ruled over Natlan. Funny thing about Ochkan, though, he was a man. A dragon man, or maybe just a dragon, burninating the countryside and peasants. The point is, Ochkan was allegedly half human, half dragon. So, perhaps Enjo's old legend doesn't seem so far-fetched. More on that later, though. But Natlan has a lot of themes about human and dragon adaptation. But there's also an underlying history that blurs the line between human and dragon. And it comes long before this Grand Alliance and Dragon Man Ochkan. That's the story of the Sage of the Stolen Flame. The Sage is the figure in Natlan's history who allowed humans to use phlogiston, which was once the power of the ancient dragons. The Sage had a plan behind sharing the phlogiston with humanity, and I think our saurian companion is supposed to maybe be a part of it, ? To understand exactly what the Sage did, it helps to understand the history of Natlan. Now, Natlan has a bit of a confusing timeline in my opinion, but it can be summarized like this. There were first the Dragon Sovereigns, then the Primordial One and the Unified Civilization, followed by a Tribal Era. Then the first Pyro Archon came along with the Grand Alliance, and then Ochkan and Ochkanatlan, followed by a few other eras leading to the Cataclysm. Clementine has a great video that goes into more detail if you're interested, but I want to track this sage's origins. The ancient dragons once reigned supreme over the world, but then the Primordial One came, dunked on them, and created a new world. This ushered in a unified civilization where the Heavenly Envoys guided humanity. But then there was the War of the Second Throne. This is what is depicted in the first mural in the Revelations of the Past quest, which illustrates Dark Wings from Beyond raising the land. It seems like this dark dragon could be the Dragon King Nibelung returning with the power of the Abyss, as Apep described. In the war's wake, Teyvat was nearly destroyed, but in Natlan, however, the dragons survived. It was a violent and chaotic era, with a feculent darkness still lingering. So the dragons ruled with humans eking out existence in small tribes. The wise dragon Washaklahun Ubakan looked at the state of things and was like, "This kinda sucks, we can do better." He saw these little weakling humans whose determination and will impressed him, and he recognized their potential. So he came up with a plan, a profane path of evolution, to steal a seed of phlogiston from the Sovereign and share it with humanity. He would later be known as the Sage of the Stolen Flame. The Sage would eventually meet and form a pact with a human named Xbalanque, who would defeat the Pyro Sovereign and emerged revived from its body. This is the scene in the second mural, so there's a gap of time between the two. Then Xbalanque would use powers borrowed from the heavens to ascend and become the first Pyro Archon and create the rules of Natlan. Importantly, the saurians would evolve from the dragons to coexist with humans. After Xbalanque returned to the Sacred Flame, the Dragon Man Ochkan would rule as a tyrant. After the tyrant, Natlan would subsequently have many archons, leading to the Cataclysm with Mavuika and Tenoch's heroes. So this is a super brief and super scuffed summary, but the main question that arises from all of this is, why exactly did the sage steal and share a seed of phlogiston with humanity in the first place? What did the sage see in humanity? During the tribal era after the War of the Second Throne, the sage reflected on the state of things, ruminating that the folly of the dragons was contributing to the endless cycles of the rule of the world. The sage yearned for something different, something more. The sage envisioned something extraordinary, a hope of another new race. That is, merging two species and two bloodlines as one, and thus would an ancient pulse surge through a reborn civilization. So, it seems that the sage saw more than just a land where saurians and humans could coexist, but perhaps they could become one and the same. The Obsidian Codex Feather begins to describe exactly what this entails. For unlike the plan of that first Divine One, what the most sage one brought was the profane path of evolution. This first Divine One could refer to a few candidates, but my vibe check is telling me this is the primordial one. And evolution is a divergence from their original plan. This is interesting because we've had a lot of sussy mentions about evolution. For example, the Sumeru Academia lists tampering with human evolution as one of its 6 sins. Siraj from El Haytham's story quest wanted to create a collective consciousness to drive humans toward their ultimate evolution. Another example is the Abyssling Klingzer, who evolved and grew more limbs, and was able to harness the power of the Abyss. And here's another important example. Rene of Narcissenkreuz fixated on this idea of evolution, although he would probably call this transcendence above the laws of the material world. So, a common thread here lies in the power of evolution not to grow extra beefy arms, but to refine will and harness power that can rewrite the rules. Now, this is some personal speculation, and I'm thinking out loud, but to me, these endless cycles that rule the world remind me of Fortuna, which is the unyielding wheel of fate dictating periodic destruction. Civilizations rise, then fall, then rise again from the dust of the old. Like, to me, this seems reflected in the sage saying that all things shall perish, but at the same time, servants will become rulers and slaves will become masters. Just for some clarification though, from Nouvelette's story, the ancient dragons wouldn't be bound to constellations and thus fate. However, Fortuna refers more to the fate of the world than individual fate. So to me, this could line up with the sage's original motivation, imagining something beyond history's iron rules. So, I think it's possible he wanted a transcendent power to defy the laws of Teyvat. Alternatively, some other speculation. The sage looked at the world, destroyed by the Abyss at the time, and wanted to find that transcendent power to fight and obliterate the feculent darkness, the abyssal corruption. The sage did dream of a world without filth and decay, and wanted to sow the seeds for the future. But also consider this. In his character stories, Nouvelette ponders, and could it not be that King Nibelung had been wrong, and that the Black Void could only be opposed if all life were to band together as one? So perhaps the sage is taking that sentiment quite literally, finding a transcendent power through evolution to fight the Abyss. Going back to the sage's plan, we don't really know how this manifested. It seems as though the sage turned away from humanity during subsequent eras where humans would use the phlogiston to fuel conflict between each other. However, the sage seemed to be present through many eras in Natlan's history, although we don't know much about that. Pakal just says that there are tales of placing him in the Tribal era and Natlan, and even the Shadowpins of the Cataclysm. So basically all throughout Natlan's history. But now we have hints that he's still around, or it may even just be an echo. You could even call it his will. but the influence of the sage still seems to linger. When we first reach Natlan, we enter a small domain and hear a voice calling us the Chosen of Dragons. We gain the ability to indwell saurians, and we meet our new little friend. I named mine John. Manku from the Relics Association sees him and explains that little guy is different because of a special mark he has. A mark of ancient power. This power is too great for saurians to bear, and they'll go mad and become dangerous. The bearers of this mark are even turned away by the Wyub and Night Kingdom, who protect all in Natlan. The mark that little guy has is called the Flamelord's Blessing. The Flamelord is Xukotl, who we might be able to infer must be the ancient pyro sovereign. So Manku explains there could be a way to save him. Basically, we need to collect 2 tokens, take it to a volcano, and cleanse the mark in the sacred fire there. We later learn the basis for this ritual. Xbalanque and the sage made a pledge for the future of saurians. When Xbalanque defeated the sovereign, the eye of the pyro sovereign was split in 2, and each half was given to Xbalanque and the sage. It's these golden entreaties that can be taken back to the volcano and used to make the Flamelord forget the saurian's name he gave them, and the mark can be then cleansed in fire. Brief side note, this tie to Xbalanque defeating the pyro sovereign is how we can infer Xukotl is the pyro sovereign. Throughout questing with Little Guy to find these tokens, we hear a mysterious voice. Paimon suggests the sage is behind this voice, guiding the Chosen of Dragons. And dialogue later insinuates that Chosen of Dragons either means chosen by the sage or chosen by Little Guy. Now, the voice being the sage makes sense because the ruins are said to be a puzzle set up by him. Furthermore, the pledge Xbalanque and the sage made was for the future of humans and saurians. But there are a few things still not sitting right with me, so I want to explore that a little bit. Major speculation disclaimer, everybody's so creative! The Flaming Kukusaur also has this mark of the Flamelord. This Kukusaur, Nobu, was the companion of Menelek, one of the heroes who fought with Tenoch during the Cataclysm. Its description says that one of those heroes, probably Menelek, agreed to go on this pilgrimage to the volcano to save Nobu. But there obviously wasn't a happy ending to this. When arguing with Manku, Pakal mentions this pilgrimage was last attempted 500 years ago. This insinuates that Menelek and Nobu did attempt, but were unsuccessful with the pilgrimage. Perhaps the journey was simply too much and they fell into lava or died of dysentery, but I think there may be another reason why this was not successful. While Pakal and Manku know of this ceremony, it's obviously still a very mythical and very untested ceremony. So I'm wondering if Menelek and Nobu did make it to the volcano, but this ceremony to remove the Flamelord's blessing isn't all that it seems. Consider this. The mysterious voice, who is probably the sage or his will, says that by doing all these trials, we shall be permitted to set foot on the sacred mountain, the volcano. Here's the thing. The voice is very fragmented, with other odd things like witness all and liberate all. But when we're in the Night Kingdom, we seem to get more messages of warning. The cat tells us to be wary of those with ill intent. And in the quest to return the obsidian fragment to the temple, we talk to a tablet that tells us, "Trust not lightly the so-called vision of the sacred mountain. Reject his promise." This second being in particular makes it more explicit. Don't trust the sage. But why should we not trust this voice guiding us to help save our saurian companion? Here's my heavy speculation. But perhaps this ritual is actually less about cleansing and more about consolidation. Let me explain, and there are a few directions we could go with this. For example, normal saurians can't handle the blessing because it is such an ancient primal power. But on the other hand, maybe that could be a new ingredient in a new stage of evolution. But I also can't get those lines about merging of species and creation of a new bloodline out of my head. Like, in general, the ritual is weird because usually when you collect fragments, it's to reconstruct something. I personally don't get why having the Pyro Sovereign's eye fragments together again would help to make the Pyro Sovereign forget the saurian's name. But consider this. Xbalanque's and the Sage's pledge was all about the coexistence of saurians and humans. The trial itself is all about coordinating and being connected with your saurian companion. The tutorial for this is titled One Heart, One Mind. So I just wonder if this is less about coexistence and more about just a singular existence. Listen, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a maniac, but I feel like the Sage actually set up a ritual to fusion merge man and dragon. Is this crazy? Am I crazy? I mean, but he totally wanted to merge the two into a new bloodline. Is that what we're unintentionally trying to do here? Listen, this may be crazy talk, but hear me out. Consider this. The Sage's voice shows us the mural to witness the sin that will obliterate all. Here, I think he's referring to the abyssal apocalypse of the Second Throne. He directs us to defeat the enemy cloaked in darkness, and that only the enemy cloaked in shadow shall not be forgiven. This, to me, sounds like the goal here is, in fact, to find a way to combat the abyss. And perhaps that way is through evolution, and a merging of bloodlines. Because perhaps King Xbalanque had been wrong, and that the Black Void could only be opposed if all life were to band together as one. Literally. This is crack, but this is all to say. This journey may not be to save Little Guy, but a ritual to enact the Sage's plan for evolution, and to finally defeat the Dark Tide. It's a world quest though, so that probably won't happen, but we're definitely going to get some deep dragon lore along the way, no doubt. But I have a few more random, slightly related thoughts about this concept of dragon evolution though. This next part is mostly an unhinged string of loosely connected ideas with a lot of hanging questions I have, but it has to do with eyes. I wanted to briefly go back to Ochkan, who was a friend of Xbalanque and also the tyrant who ruled after him. Basically, he was a captive of the dragons during the tribal era, and he was also a mastermind who had extensive knowledge of phlogiston engravings. During his rule, he had various names like the Sacred Lord and also the Python King. He's also the half-man tyrant in the Unfinished Reverie set from a few patches ago. In the Weapon Ascension materials, we learned he wore a mask to hide his face. He would look into his eyes as he descended into madness and see his pupils turning into vertical slits. And when he tore off his mask, a draconic visage was revealed. Honestly, it's unclear to me if he was turning into a half-dragon or if he was just born that way. But either way, it makes me wonder if the Sage had anything to do with his condition. I've also heard speculation that Ochkan was the Sage himself, but I personally don't know. I could be swayed either way at this point. But he's not the focus of this video, and honestly, he was just a segue. Twice already. Because there's something that bothers me about this vertical pupil slit issue. Let me explain this by going back to Enjo. He told us this story about the Bishop people in order to erode our trust with Tsumi, the priestess who was seemingly helping us. She also had vertical pupils, thus she must have been a Bishop person in disguise, set to betray us. As it turns out, Enjo was truthful about Tsumi being allied with the Bishops, and Tsumi herself thought of herself as one with the Bishops, being raised by them. But the quest also points out that Orobashi's vassals were half snake, half human, and Tsumi instead was likely one of those vassals. Which does make me wonder if the Python King was also more snake than dragon as well. But anyway, Enjo told us that according to legend, Bishops in Enkanomiya evolved to look like humans to infiltrate Enkanomian society. They're indistinguishable from humans except for their unique pupils. Enjo leverages this part to make us distrust Sumi, as she had vertical slit pupils, but she also turned out to be a vassal. But Enjo's approach is vague enough that Paimon was actually the one to point out Sumi's eyes. He didn't really directly say that Bishop people had those slits, or that Sumi was even a Bishop person. Just reptilian. It was all implied and assumed. Now, the Bishops and Nouvellette do have vertical pupils, but at the same time, and this is crack, but I'm bothered by some saurian eyes, so I want to go back to an older idea of mine. I've previously used Enjo's legend to suggest we know of a group of actual Bishop people, some people who have been identified because of their unique eye shape, even brought up in an Archon quest, like Kaya clocking Dane or Traveler guessing Clotar's origins. You know, I mean the Conrians. This was back during 3.6, and I still think there's something to this, despite my inability to reconcile my 50 billion crack theories about Conria. But this wasn't my only line of reasoning for that specific idea, or even the most important. Because in 3.6, we met a Pep who first revealed the name of the Dragon King of the Sovereigns. That Dragon King is Nibelung. This name immediately stands out because of Richard Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen. In the opera, the Nibelung are the dwarves, and this includes one of the main characters, Alberic. And we of course have met and know of a few Alberics already, like Caribert, Clotar, and of course, Kaya. Did you think you could get through this video without a Kaya mention? Ha! This is all to say, seeing this setup of dragon and human evolution, I wonder if Natlan's setup will be foreshadowing the true nature of Conria. Especially given that the Sage, by my speculation, wants to use this human-dragon evolution as a means of power and transcendence. Transcendence above either fate or the abyss. Also, consider this final note. In Wagner's opera, the Nibelung Alberic steals gold from the Rhine Maidens and makes a ring of power out of it. So on a very superficial level, there is a shared theme of the theft or stealing of power. So perhaps the Sage of the Stolen Flame is also foreshadowing and is a bit of a story within a story. Okay, listen, I know all of this is very unhinged. I told you from the get-go it was, and it may be crack, but I think it's interesting to think about. Of course, I have no idea how this would tie into King Irmin and Irminsul, or the Crimson Moon versus the Eclipse, or, you know, general Kaya stuff. And I still have so many questions. Like, Arlecchino has different special eyes, and that has to be meaningful, right? And Aha flipping a coin and drinking in Kenichi's teaser like a certain Conrian does surely wouldn't be hinting at a connection or anything, right?
Yes, girl, you are on to nothing. Cook somewhere else.
I didn't know how to fit this in, but here's a fun fact thing. In Yae Miko's story quest, you talk about books or whatever. There's 2 stories mentioned that are either about dragons or dragon evolution. The Dragon and the Grand Adventure is a story that starts off suspiciously like Traveler arriving in Mondstadt. Anyway, the hero defeats the dragon, and the dragon turns into a girl, which starts a romance between human and dragon? There's no Grand Adventure though, that's just the protagonist's name? The other one is I turned into a Geovishap hatchling. That's the plot. The protagonist woke up and found they had turned into a Geovishap. But if he keeps rolling, he can keep evolving. So he wants to keep rolling so he can be the strongest. Monster evolution is super popular these days, says Miko. Listen, I know these are goofy light novels, but are they? Keep in mind, Miko posted about birthday samsaras before Sumeru came out. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your own theories. Check your smoke detectors. Okay, thank you. Bye!
so think we